Growing up in the early 2000s, regardless of how big of a Nintendo fan you actually were, meant DS on the bus, Wii Sports at every sleepover, Mario Kart Wii ending friendships, and carrying around your 3DS for StreetPass at school. Older generations had niche gaming scenes, younger generations had Xbox parties and iPad games, but for those of us born in the early 2000s, it felt like we all just grew up on Nintendo. It felt like everyone owned the same consoles, played the same games, and shared the same memories without ever meeting each other. And if you're not Gen Z, don't worry, by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why these games hit so hard for us. So let's go back to where it all started. When I think back to when Nintendo actually became a presence in my life, it always starts with the DS. Not because it was the most powerful system in the world or because I was keeping up with gaming news. Like, I had no clue what graphics or processing power even meant. It was just this little blue rectangle that felt like it could do anything. I remember getting my DS in 2007 and I didn't know it at the time, but this was right when the DS Lite had basically taken over childhood. If you walked onto the bus, you would see half the kids on their DS playing Pokemon or Mario Kart or Nintendogs. And the thing about the DS was it felt personal in a way that earlier systems couldn't. When you opened it, that bright white glow came up like it was booting up your world, even though there was basically nothing except PictoChat and the actual game. And really, every game I got for the system, at least the ones I played often, kind of seemed to just shape my childhood. Super Mario 64 DS was the first one I remember really sinking into. I had no idea it was a remake, and I wasn't comparing it to the original or thinking about what changed. All I knew was that I could run around Peach's castle and jump into paintings. The fact that Yoshi started the game made total sense to me. I thought Nintendo just really liked Yoshi, and that's how you started all Mario games. And I mean, who doesn't like Yoshi? Hell, I didn't even know what a Yoshi was since this was basically my first game. I'd wander around for hours without making actual progress, just exploring, trying to catch rabbits, or replaying the minigames like they were a whole mode of their own. I think this is where my gambling addiction started. What made it special wasn't just the game structure, it was that for the first time, I could bring something that had seemingly endless entertainment with me anywhere. I'd be in the backseat of the car playing through Bob-omb Battlefield, or I'd be hiding under the covers at night, trying to act like I was sleeping so I wouldn't have to put my DS away. Then there was also New Super Mario Bros DS, which I think may be the most popular game of the generation among at least the people I was around. Everyone had this game. It was simple, it was just a classic side-scrolling Mario game, but everything about it felt bigger than I'd played before. The music was catchy, the worlds felt alive, and the giant mushroom power-up was legendary. I remember thinking I'd discovered like a cheat code the first time I found a hidden path or a secret exit in this game also. And because everyone else my age had this game, it meant everyone understood what you were talking about. Just mentioning World 4 or Dry Bowser was enough to start a conversation with someone you barely knew. In fact, I was so obsessed with this game, I had a birthday party where all the party favors were themed in this game. Like, look, I still have this water bottle, and this was like 17 or 18 years ago. Mario Kart DS was another big part of this era for me. Not because I was really good at it or anything, it really wasn't, but because this was the first time I really understood that games could be competitive. I didn't know online existed yet, and I don't even think I had actual Wi-Fi yet, so racing was either just something I played with friends locally or against CPUs. Everyone played this game, everyone knew the music, everyone had their favorite racer. Like, if you play music from this game around someone between like 20 and 25, maybe even a little younger, you're probably gonna have them crying tears filled with nostalgia. Staying on the topic of multiplayer Mario games, since I don't know if you can tell yet, I really like Mario games. Mario Party DS was massive. Like, Mario Party 8, which I'll get to later, was big, but I would just play short bursts of minigames in this. I would do the story mode, because it was just pure fun. Like, this is one of the best Mario Party games in my opinion. Something about the art direction of this game just really felt cozy, like how they were all shrunk down and in gardens, in a music room. It was just really fun to explore this game. Another part of the DS era for me was finding out about Game Boy Advance games. So I had no idea what a Game Boy Advance was when I got my DS. I just remember these big game packs. I didn't know why they were different from the normal DS cartridges, but that didn't matter. Played games like Superstar Saga, the Mario Advance games, and this was the reason why I didn't want to upgrade to a DSi, because I wanted to be able to play these games. And I've talked a lot about Mario games, but how about Pokemon? Well, I wasn't the biggest Pokemon fan. The early to late 2000s had Pokemon still as a cultural phenomenon. Like, if you're my age, you remember the kid who brought around like the strategy guide to Diamond and Pearl or Black and White. Like, you couldn't escape hearing about this. Even if you had no idea about anything with Pokemon, you probably ended up learning something just from the kids who would play this. I don't think I went a day without seeing Pokemon cards as well. These were seen as gold, and kids would just argue about who had the better cards. And beyond games, like, the DS as a device just had this charm to it. PictoChat wasn't something I used often, but when I did, it felt like the most high-tech thing imaginable. StreetPass didn't exist yet, but the DS still had this strange way of connecting everyone. You could pull it out during a sleepover, and suddenly everyone gravitated towards it. In a way, the DS era wasn't defined by any single game. It was a mix of exploration, portability, and accessibility that made it feel like the perfect system to grow up with. Like, this is what got got so many people into so many games like Mario, Pokemon, even Zelda, even though I didn't play Zelda games back then. And remember, this was also before smartphones were mainstream. The original DS came out in 2004, which was 3 years before the iPhone, so touchscreens were not a common thing at the time. So it was just another thing that just really was cool about the DS. But you know what? This was only the beginning. Going back to 2007, I remember one time I was at a friend's house and I was playing this boxing game and I didn't know what it was. I was just handed a controller and said, act like you're punching with this controller. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the Nintendo Wii and that was Wii Sports. Just a year later or so, I would finally get one of my own. And while the DS felt like something more that was just your own, the Wii felt more like a social gaming console. Like this was meant to be played with friends. But before I get to that, let's just talk about the actual Wii remote. This was nothing like the DS. You weren't pushing buttons anymore. Well, you were pushing buttons, but you were also swinging, pointing, steering, and occasionally accidentally or purposely hitting someone in the face. Like I mentioned, Wii Sports was the first game I ever played on it, and it set the tone for everything that came after. Even today, I still play this a few times a year, whether I'm at a family member's house or a friend's house. The simplicity of it is what made it great. You didn't need to be good at games to understand how to swing your arm. Everyone from kids to grandparents could pick it up instantly, and I didn't think about how innovative it was at the time. I just knew it was fun. My friends and I treated Wii Sports like an actual athletic event. Like we'd stand way too close to the TV and got overly serious about these games. And while this video is specifically on Nintendo, a couple years later the Kinect also came out, and even with all its flaws, it was really fun. Like this was a fun time to grow up with all these games that actually required you to move in real life. But I'd go to my friends' houses and we'd end up doing the same routine. We'd play either Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, New Super Mario Bros Wii, Mario Party 8, or Smash Bros Brawl if we were feeling especially competitive. And let's start with Mario Kart Wii. That game basically defined every gathering I had for years. The tracks were bright and memorable, the items felt chaotic without being unfair, and the Wii wheel, even though it wasn't really necessary, it just made you feel like you were actually steering. I remember how smooth it felt to drift, even though at the time I was probably doing it wrong. The game just struck this comfortable balance between skill and chaos, and it's kept it fun to this day. It was New Super Mario Bros Wii, and while the DS version is probably my personal favorite, the Wii version was definitely more fun to play with friends. You could have up to 4 players at once, and that made even the easiest levels unpredictable. Someone would lose track of where their character was, someone would pick up another player by accident or purpose, more often than not, and someone always fell into a pit and would beg you to get them out of the bubble. But that chaos is what made it special. It was the kind of game where you couldn't get mad for long. Like the levels were quick, the music was catchy, and finishing a tough stage felt like something you actually accomplished together. I got this the day it came out, and my brother and I finished it in one playthrough. When a friend brought out Mario Party 8, it felt like the perfect follow-up. The visuals were quirky, the host of this game was strange, and some mini-games felt like pure luck. But that didn't matter. It was the type of game you didn't need to explain to anyone. You just picked your character, spun the wheel, and hoped for the best. To this day, this is still my favorite Mario Party, and I'll get to that a little later in the video, but I just have so many good memories with this, even beyond the Wii generation. Mario Party 8 was always my Mario Party of choice. And then we had Super Smash Bros Brawl, which felt almost intimidating the first time I played it. Seeing this huge crossover of characters on the screen like Mario, Link, Pikachu, Sonic, and a bunch of random characters I had no idea existed. Like, who is Lucas? I didn't fully understand all the mechanics, but it didn't matter. It was the first time a fighting game felt accessible without needing to learn combos or button inputs. And what ties all these memories together is that the Wii wasn't just a system I played, but it was a system I shared. It was part of birthday parties, sleepovers, weekends, even holidays. The Mii channel music playing in the background while someone created a ridiculous character felt like its own game. The Wii Shop channel theme might as well have been the national anthem of childhoods. And of course, some of my favorite games of all time came out on the Wii. The Mario Galaxy games, Super Paper Mario, Mario Super Sluggers, Mario Sports Mix, so many great games, Mario Strikers Charge, Donkey Kong Country Returns, Twilight Princess Skyward Sword. There were so many great games on this system. After a few years had gone by, and it's around 2012, I'm about 9 or 10 years old, my Nintendo experience shifted again. Not because of something I bought, but because of something I saw. And that moment happened right after Christmas at my best friend's house. I remember walking in expecting the usual Wii routine like Mario Kart, Smash, Mario Super Sluggers, Wii Sports Resort, but he walked in the living room holding something that looked like a Wii controller with a screen glued to it. I didn't know what I was looking at, but it was the Wii U gamepad, and until that second, I didn't even know the Wii U existed, and it shows you how awful the marketing for this was. But he put in Nintendo Land, and that instantly changed everything. Nintendo Land is one of those games where you don't even need to know the rules, the visuals, the sound effects. Now each minigame controlled, immediately going into the game, just something about about it instantly clicked. Like, I love the theme park vibe of it. We'd walk around the park and just see all the different mini games, all the different Mii's around, all the different landmarks. And we'd play all the games in this. Like, Mario Chase was fun and chaotic. Luigi's Ghost Mansion had the seeker hiding under a blanket to not cheat. The Animal Crossing minigame was a lot more competitive than it had any right to be. But the funny thing is that Nintendo Land wasn't just some party game, but it made the Wii U feel different. That moment playing in my friend's house is what made me want one. And by the next year, I got one for myself, and that made me become even a bigger Nintendo fan. But this was also the time where I noticed a lot of my friends just weren't playing Nintendo anymore. Like, most of them had moved on to Xbox or PlayStation, and while most of them still loved the Wii, most of them just didn't have a Wii U. Most people just didn't have a Wii U because it sold awful. But that doesn't change the fact that for those of us who did have a Wii U, there was still a lot there to love. But around the same time, I also got a 3DS. I didn't buy it the second it came out, and I wasn't following gaming news or release calendars yet, but once I got one, it immediately became my new main system. Part of that was because of the games, but a big part of it was because of the experience surrounding it. So immediately, the 3DS was a massive upgrade to the DS. Like, these games look so much better here. There were so many more apps, there were so many more online games. The 3D effect was a novelty at first. Like, I kept it on until I got a headache and then pretty much never used it again. But what stuck with me was how much personality the system had. The sound effects, the applications, the AR cards I used exactly one time ever. The entire system felt like its own little ecosystem. The first game I really sank time into was Tomodachi Life, and that was thanks to the same friend who let me play on a system whenever I came over. Tomodachi Life was unlike anything else I'd ever played. It was weird, it was random, and half the appeal was just watching Mii's do the strangest things imaginable. I didn't understand why it worked, but it did. Like, every time I saw Mii ask for a bizarre meal or busted into song, it felt like Nintendo just captured something purely magic in this game. Also, on a side note, we're finally getting a new Tomodachi Life, and I cannot be happier about that. Then there was also Animal Crossing New Leaf, which is still one of the most relaxing experiences I've ever had with a game. While Animal Crossing has had a lot of fans since the GameCube, the Wii, the DS, I feel like New Leaf is where the series really took off. In my own experience, like, I would play this every day. I want to check on the villagers, I wanted to work in my house, I wanted to work in my town. Even if I only had 10 minutes, I'd just play this game for a little bit. Whether it was just cleaning up weeds, catching bugs, moving something around in my house, like, there was just always something to do here. One of my favorite games on 3DS was a game that wasn't even really known for being on 3DS because it was on the Wii U as well, and it was Smash 3DS. This is where I really started to take Smash seriously. Like, I would go to tournaments and use my 3DS as a controller for some reason. Like, a lot of my friends and I would go to these local tournaments, and it was always my same friends that would go. And I remember I won every single tournament except one time where I got second because I was just so addicted to this game. Also, I'm talking about the Wii U version, but this was around the same time as the 3DS version. But besides that, I played Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, like the Scare Scraper mode, and that was a really underrated game mode. This era also had me getting into Pokemon games like Omega Ruby. I was never the biggest Pokemon fan, and I'm still not, but this was one of my favorite games ever. I also started experimenting with more games like Fire Emblem Awakening, which was the first strategy game I ever played that didn't really scare me off. I actually got this at the Nintendo store in New York because, obviously, being a Smash fan, I knew what Fire Emblem was, but I'd never played a game in the series before, but I wanted to see what the hype was about. This was also the era where I experienced classic games remade like Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D for the first time. I didn't grow up with the N64, so 3DS remakes were my introduction to these Zelda games. Ocarina felt like a huge adventure, and Majora felt like something completely different and weird in a good way. At school, bringing the 3DS became its own thing. Like, StreetPass made people want to bring their 3DSs even if they didn't want to play it. Like, there was just something about the feeling of just bringing your 3DS, like, not even looking at it all day, having it in your backpack. But then after school, you'd take out your 3DS and just see that green light. Then you'd open up Mii Plaza, you'd see all the Miis who showed up. Sometimes they'd be random kids you'd never met before, sometimes they'd be friends. But there were just fun games with this, like the puzzle game, like Find Me, which ended up inspiring its own game, Warrior's Way. There were so many more, and I actually have a video on this if you want to check it out. If there's one feature I miss on modern Nintendo consoles, it's StreetPass, because this was just a ton of fun. Also, I can't forget Miiverse. Like, posting screenshots, doodles, random comments felt like being part of a larger community, really before social media had that same energy. Like, this was around the time when social media started to really blow up, and Miiverse was just a community exclusively for Nintendo games. This was on the 3DS and the Wii U, and it felt like it kind of connected those two ecosystems. This is around the time where I really started to become a big Nintendo fan. Like, I'd watch all the directs, I'd watch their presentations, I would see what games were coming out. This 2015 was when I started my first YouTube channel. Now, the 3DS and the Wii U era weren't Nintendo's strongest commercially, but for me, and honestly for a lot of kids who were my age, it was one of the most formative. It's also just something nostalgic to me about just seeing the Nintendo directs at this time, like seeing Reggie, seeing Miyamoto, seeing Iwata when he was still alive. Like, these were the faces of Nintendo, and that's something we don't really have nowadays. Like, Nintendo doesn't have the same personality. In 2016, Nintendo suddenly became exciting again after some of the dark years of Nintendo. I remember it clearly. One day in fall, Nintendo announced that the reveal trailer for their next system, still called the NX at the time, was dropping the next day. I don't know why, but that announcement just hit different. Maybe it was because the Wii U was slowing down, maybe it was because I could feel something new on the horizon, maybe it was just that my interest in Nintendo had grown so much since getting my Wii U and 3DS. Either way, I remember being more excited for that trailer than almost anything else that year. The next day at school, I practically sprinted to the bathroom after class just to watch it uninterrupted, because while I was in class, I didn't even know what it was called yet. Like, I was in 8th grade, we were not able to check our phones, and I remember someone in the hall told me it was called the Nintendo Switch, and I still had no idea what that was. But after I saw that first trailer, I saw the Switch logo clicking together, I saw Breath of the Wild, and then I saw in the trailer the guy just take the Switch out of the dock and start playing it. It became clear immediately that the rumors of this being a hybrid console were completely right. At lunch that day, my friends and I just couldn't talk about anything else. We're all just sitting there in the middle school cafeteria, talking about the trailer, trying to analyze everything, and the hype just kept building for months. Like, getting to see all the rumors come out, seeing the Switch presentation in January. I was covering this on my other channel so much. Like, I don't know how many of these videos are still up, but I'm sure you could still watch them. My friend even made a video on my channel where he was flipping the Nintendo Switch water bottle. The vibes were just different at this time. In early 2017, everyone was paying attention to Nintendo again. Like, even a lot of my friends who grew up with the Wii and the DS, who skipped the 3DS and the Wii U, like, people wanted to know what the Switch was. People wanted a Switch because it was like nothing else we'd ever seen at that point. I remember the hype around content creators too, like C&D camping outside the Nintendo store in New York for like a month just made the whole thing feel like an event. Everywhere you looked, people were talking about Zelda, the Switch, how Nintendo might actually be back, and I feel like this is something that wasn't replicated with the Switch 2. Like, there just wasn't that same build up to the release of it. I got the Switch the day it came out and even unboxed it on YouTube, and like with the 3DS, we'd play on the Switch every day before school. Like, this was 2017, so there was limited games, but we'd play a lot of 1-2 Switch. There's just something funny about playing these games. Like, this was not worth $50, and I know a lot of people hate a 1-2 Switch, but it was a fun game. I even remember the day the Switch came out, after playing Breath of the Wild for hours, my same friend who I played Wii games with, who I played DS games with, who introduced me to so many Nintendo games, and introduced me to the Wii U specifically, had a few of us over just to play a bunch of 1-2 Switch games, because we all had our own systems, and we all could play whatever game we wanted, and it also felt like we were playing home console games. And around that time, the Nintendo World Championships also came back. That was in 2015, and I actually made a full video on that if you want to check that out. And they were hyping up Mario Odyssey, because as a big Mario fan, this was the game I was looking forward to the most. I even went with my friends to Target to play the demo, and by this time I was around 14 years old, and this was my third Nintendo generation. But this one felt different, maybe because I was older, or because I was more self-aware as a Nintendo fan, or because I finally understood why the new consoles mattered. But little did I know this would be the last Nintendo console that would come out during my childhood. By the time 2021 came around, everything in my life looked completely different. I wasn't a little kid playing on the DS and Wii anymore, not even a young teenager just playing on the 3DS and the Wii U. I'd graduated high school, packed in my stuff, moved into a college where I barely knew anyone, and even though I was 18 and technically an adult, that feeling of starting over hit hard, like a new campus with new people and new routines. And for the first time in my life, like, none of the friends I grew up playing Nintendo games with were even around. It's not like I could really play online either because the Wi-Fi was just horrible, but being away from home didn't mean I stopped being a Nintendo fan. If anything, having that familiar piece of my childhood pop back up in a completely new environment felt really comforting. My roommate, who I had talked to before moving in, but never actually met in person, ended up bringing a Wii. Not a Switch, a Nintendo Wii, which at that point was 15 years old, and that really surprised me. He wasn't even really a Nintendo fan, like, he was just someone my age who, like anyone our age, had a Wii growing up. It reminded me how universal the Wii was for our generation. Like, it wasn't like past generations, where it was only just nerds playing on consoles, or just little kids. Like, the games that we grew up with, like, we kept playing with, like, throughout our entire childhoods into adulthood. It didn't matter where people were from, what major they had, whether they even considered themselves gamers or Nintendo fans. Almost every single person I met at school had a memory of playing Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, Mario Party 8. Sometimes I'd go to a friend's floor with a communal TV, and I would just see people playing on the Wii there. And whenever a group of people came to my room, whether they were close friends I had, or people I'd met recently, the Wii always came up. People always wanted to play on it. When people saw the Wii, they would just ask what games I had. Like, these were 18 and 19-year-olds who all wanted to play Mario games on the Wii. I can't speak for other generations. Maybe people 5 years older than me brought GameCubes, maybe people 10 years older than me brought Nintendo 64s, but I don't know, I feel like the Wii was just special in that regard. Like, some of my best memories from college are just playing Mario Kart Wii, or playing Mario Party 8, just playing through a whole game, which would take a while depending on how many rounds you went. But unlike the low taper fade, like, it just never dragged on. This is when I realized that growing up in this generation didn't mean that I just had this completely unique experience of playing these games, but it's just the culture at the time, just the landscape, that led to pretty much everyone experiencing a lot of the things that I loved. Like, in the same way how in the 80s, many people played at arcades and have that shared experience, for Gen Z, it was playing playing on the Wii and the DS, and even the 3DS and the Wii U, before finally graduating to a Switch as we got a little older. And now we're at 2025 with the Switch 2 era. By this point, most people in my generation are adults, and if they're not, they're nearly adults. Like, I'm 22 years old, I've been out of college for over a year, I'm working full time, and while I don't have as much time to play video games anymore, I'm still as big as a Nintendo fan as ever, because these are the games I grew up with, and I'll always have a special place in my heart for these. And that's what it was like with Nintendo as someone in Gen Z. Like, I feel like my generation was kind of the first to not have gaming be just this more niche thing. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like past generations had people get to like their middle to older teenage years, and then a lot of them would just stop gaming. A lot of them played different games. Just feels like when I grew up, it was the pinnacle of just social gaming, like with the Wii, with the DS, even with other consoles, even with the Kinect. Seems like games were just made to be more social. Now most games are online, like local multiplayer isn't dead, but it's just not as prevalent anymore with online gaming. And while we obviously did have online gaming back then, there was more emphasis put on local multiplayer. Just felt like a lot of games were just timeless. Now, if you're older or younger than me, I hope I gave you a good perspective of what it was like to grow up during this time. And I'd also love to hear your perspective. What was it like growing up in your generation? If you're the same age as me, like, tell me if my story is very similar to yours, and if you have a similar view on this. This is a different kind of video I made. I wanted to make more of a personal video, just talking about the games I grew up with and the experience I had growing up as a Nintendo fan. So let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this. If you made it to the end of this video, consider subscribing and joining my Discord, as well as liking the video. Thank you for watching Domainy, and I'll see you next time.